What's going on, you guys? My name's Niko, and I'm going to show you how I went from a 205 to a 148. And honestly, to tell you the truth, I did it in one meet. One meet I ran 205, and the next day I took 148. I just took this one drug called... No, let me stop playing. This was actually, I gotta say, a 6-year process. Yeah, I think 6 years is the right thing. From my freshman year of high school in early 2018 all the way up until 2023. So yeah, 5-6 years it took me to go from 205 to 148. And each year and each time barrier that I broke brought its new challenges and different learning lessons throughout the way. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, 205. Let me give you guys a little backstory of the type of athlete I was when I was 205 pace. So when I first started running track, the sole purpose of why I was running track was because of football. I only wanted to become a football player one day, to become a Division I athlete. That was my lifelong goal, was to play Division I football, was to be at a D1 school and live that D1 lifestyle. I always wanted to go to the NFL. And so my coach was like, hey, Niko, listen, I think you should join track. You did middle school track. It was cool, but I really didn't fall in love with it. Just in our off season, instead of getting into the weight room and getting super swole, because I was very skinny at the time, I'd say you go ahead and run track and see how it goes. So here I go doing track my freshman year of high school, and I'm over here trying to be a 100, 200, 55 meter runner, and I'm getting smoked, bro. I'm getting smoked almost with girl times, because as you 800 meter runners know and milers know, that we do not have a lot of power in our start. And so I'm getting just left, I'm getting destroyed, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this track thing is not for me. And so my coach looks at me. He also was the cross country coach as well. He's like, I feel like you'd be make for a pretty good 800 meter runner. I'm like, oh man, here we go with this. I'm gonna do all these miles, I'm gonna get super bored. But that actually wasn't the case at all. I didn't know that there were any speed-based 800 meter runners. And so I was good enough with the 400 where I was like, okay, I'm cool with the 4, but the 8, I cannot lie to you guys, it was very intimidating. And so my very first ever time running the 800 in high school, it was a 4x8, and I was the first leg, and I got out like a maniac the first, I think, 400 meters. I got out completely sprinting, and the crazy thing was, I never died. I kept going. My frame at the time, I want to say I was about maybe 5'9.5", probably 5'10", but I was probably like 135 to 140 pounds, if that. I was light as a feather. I had abs that you can see from a mile away, but I was very cut, but like really not a lot of muscle. And so I run this thing with the 400 meter approach, and somehow I don't get past, nobody catches me, and I run a 2:13, and I'm like, man, that was easy. I felt good, I felt confident. I was at the front of the race. I was like, okay, maybe 800 is my race. But then the next week, I got thrown into a meet at the University of Illinois. And that's when I knew I was facing some big dogs. I was facing some sophomores, juniors, and even seniors. And as a freshman, you know how this is. It was very intimidating to face those upperclassmen. And so I get to the meet, and I'm very hyped up. I'm locked in, right? I'm like, all right. My coach comes up to me right before I run this 800 at the University of Illinois. He looks me in the eye and says, Niko, nobody's gonna tackle you. This isn't football. You have no risk of being injured. Go out there, have fun, and compete. And that really did something to my mind. I said, dang, I don't gotta worry about some 6'7" dude over here tackling me at QB or getting my knees taken out. Let's go. And so I get out. I'm the one leading the race all the way through for the first, 200, 400 meters, 600, I get passed. And when somebody passes me, that's when I'm at my best, because I know that I have somebody to chase down. So I'm chasing this guy down. I beat him with the last, I think, 50 meters. Somebody to the right of me completely flips over and trips. Bam, 205. I'm the number one freshman in the entire state. Nobody knew where that came from. I didn't know where it came from. And that's how I found out that 800 meters is my race. And so we're going to fast forward here a little bit to the outdoor season of my freshman year. So in 2018, around, let's call it March, May possibly. And I was on the A 4x8. We were en route and going to state, and I was super excited. And I ran a split of 159 at the time. And so I did that, obviously, as I talked to you guys a lot about my training early on. I was football heavy, but then as I started to progress throughout my track season, I got a little bit lighter. My mileage started to increase a little bit. I was still doing my morning runs. I was training with the sprinters, and so I was very much a hybrid in between the 800 and 400. My speed carried over. Bam, 159 as a freshman as a split. So it's nothing crazy. And my outdoor 800 meter PR that year was a 203. So I bettered my PR by 2 seconds, and that was my entire freshman year. Unfortunately, we did not make state. I ended up fumbling the ball and splitting a 207 at one meet because we were behind a lot, and I really sprinted the first 200 meters in like 25, and I do that now because I'm built for it. My fitness is built for it, but back when I'm 15 years old and I'm trying to maintain that speed, nah, man, you can't do that. I think I might have been even 14 at the time. I don't even remember. It was like 14 or 15 years old, and yeah, my body just was not able to handle that. So let's go ahead and fast forward a little bit into my sophomore year. So sophomore year, I am officially into the 159s. I opened up my season with a 203 indoor, so I knew that I was faster to where I was last year, but I still had some work to do. And unfortunately, my indoor season was a little bit lackluster. There was a little bit of a heart problem or a heart scare I had going on. My heartbeat was a bit irregular. I got tested, had to sit out the track for about a month and a half, and so I was a little bit out of shape when I came back. But this is where I really progressed in the 400 meter. In the 400 meter, I came in and my speed maintained throughout that little time of that heart scare. And indoors, I ended up going like 51 low, 51.3, 51.2, and like they call it the Indoor Championships of Illinois. And I went there, and that gave me a lot of momentum going into my outdoor season of my sophomore year. So that's about 2019, early on in the winter months of January, February. And so transitioning into outdoor, I was really focused on my 400. I was doing a lot more speed-based training, but I was still staying on the morning runs, and I was still staying very fit. And I was just a lot more tailored on trying to figure out how I want to run my race and who I am as an athlete. Football, I had an amazing season, so that still was my main priority. But then this year for track, with my experience from last year, I really brought that over and started to develop a little bit as an athlete. And so a lot of people knew my name. Colleges were starting to look at me, but still no scholarships at all. And so transitioning into my outdoor season of my sophomore year, I ended up going 49.9 and 159. And those are some pretty big marks. I was honestly more pleased with that 49.9 than the 159 because, at the time I wanted to be faster. I think I was like number 5, number 6 in the state for sophomores. And when it came to facing the seniors, I wasn't even in range or anybody's radar. So I was really focused on the 400. Unfortunately, I went to state for the 400 and they ran like 50 point, didn't make it. And I didn't bet on myself for the open 800. I went to state for the 4x800, but then I ended up splitting like a 158, 157. And it really wasn't enough to bring us to the championship rounds or the finals that day. So I had a big chip on my shoulder entering my next season with those PRs that I mentioned to you before, 49.9 and 159 in the open 800. And still not many colleges are, texting me, contacted me. I believe I went on a junior day visit to the University of Iowa, and that was my first ever time getting contacted by a Division I school. And so they made their mark on me early on. I was super impressed with their facilities, but I still had a lot of work to do, and I knew that I was nowhere in range of getting a Division I scholarship because, as you guys know, on these track and field rosters, I believe it's only 12 and a half people do end up getting scholarships, full ride scholarships, and they have to distribute that between the entire cross country team and the entire track team, which is upwards of 120 to 150 people sometimes. So you have to be a next level athlete in order to get a really good scholarship at a Division I track and field school. So keep that in mind throughout the story and what I'm about to tell you guys next. So going into my junior year, unfortunately for my junior year in football, it was not my year at all. I started to really lose love for the sport, and little did I know it was actually going to be my last year ever playing football in high school. And that really tore something out of me a little bit for my spirit. And I always had dreams and ambitions of going D1 for football, but really no schools were contacting me for football. If you think I wasn't getting contacted for track, think about like twice as much less football. I was nobody for football. And that really hurt my ego, my confidence. And I was like, man, I thought I was a football player, but at least I had this track thing to fall back on, rely on. So let me hit track as hard as possible. And this is late 2019, and everybody in this video knows what comes next, COVID. So I enter up my track and field season my junior year with so much fire, so much ambition, so many goals that I was so ready to accomplish. Our team was, I believe, ranked within the top 5, top 10 that year as a whole. We had people in every single category. I opened up my season with a 156 alone on a 180 meter track. And so if you were to translate that to a 200 meter track or even a 200 meter bank, that might have been a 154, 153 type race. If 1, I have competition, and 2, I'm at a better track, and 3, if it's later within the season. I mean, I was doing that my first meet, and people were like, oh my gosh, this guy's crazy. And you know what happens right after that? Right after I run those marks, and I'm the number 1 800 meter runner in the state, not just for freshmen, but the entire state. I'm the number 1 800 meter runner. You know what happens? Bam! Pandemic, COVID, done. Months, there's no communication with any colleges. Colleges were on a very strict rule. They were still trying to figure out what was going on with them. So, and then the recruiting was even worse. And I'm like, man, I don't got a football scholarship. I don't got a track scholarship. My entire junior year track season's over, and this is supposed to be your best year. You're supposed to have a scholarship lined up for the next upcoming year. What do I do? And so, mind you, my PRs at the time are 156 and still that 49 because I wasn't able to obviously open up and run my race. And so I trained like a maniac throughout 2020. I joined the cross country team because football was no longer a thing for me. And I joined the cross country team, and I hated cross country so much at the beginning. I hated it with a passion. I hated running the miles. I pride myself on being a speed-based 800-meter runner, and me going out there and doing those 5Ks absolutely killed my spirit. I didn't want to be there, but my coach prioritized the long-term goal of what doing cross country would help me with for the future. And I cannot thank him enough for forcing me to do cross country and get out of my feelings and push me to finally pursue what I actually was meant to do, and that was to become a more fit and endured runner. And so I quit football. I stopped trying to gain weight and get all crazy big, and I commit to track full time. I'm running 8 miles, 6 miles, and doing all these ridiculous K repeat workouts, and I'm hating them, but I'm starting to see the results quick. I'm getting more and more in shape. I see my body transforming, and I have a lot of endurance, but my speed is no longer there. So right after the cross country season went over, I PR'd with a 16:02, by the way, in the 5K. So it's not bad, it's respectable. But right after my season was over, I immediately hit speed as hard as possible because one, my back was against the wall. I'm into my senior year. I have no offers, and I am planning on these unattached track and field races in Chicago, because these are my last hope. I don't even know if we're gonna have a track season at this point. So I'm like, man, I have to figure out what I'm gonna do to get to that next level. PRs, 156, and still that 49. So I actually saw my AAU coach. I forgot to mention that back then. I used to train with an AAU coach, after my football season to get right, because, the track training wasn't for where I wanted it to be. So I joined a little club for a little bit, for a month or two, called the Flyers. Coach Boatwright. Shout out to all my Illinois fans. If you were a part of the Flyers, man, go Flyers, man, fly time. And so I joined him, and he gave me a lot of speed advice. He had coached so many great runners in the past by the name of Kamari Montgomery. He was the Illinois state record holder for the 400-meter run with like a 46 low in high school. Marcellus Moore, 20-point guy, a 6.5 guy in the 60 right now, leading and killing the NCAA. Goes to the University of Texas. So did Kamari, I believe. He went down to A&M or somewhere near Texas, I believe. And then now me as an 800-meter runner. He coached me, and I'm at the University of Nebraska now. But we're almost there. We're almost there in how I got to this mark, because there's still a lot more to the story. And so I joined AAU. I learned a lot, and then as soon as the pandemic hit and I finished cross country, I immediately went to my speed coach. So I got as much endurance as possible, stacked the endurance up to here, but my speed was down here, right? Go to my AAU coach. He gives me a whole bunch of running tips and advice, fixes my form, tells me about how to implicate my force application throughout the race when I'm running my 400s. He was very 400 heavy, and he was telling me about getting out fast in that 800-meter run is going to serve me well for the back end of my race. And I listened to him. I approached all my races aggressively, getting out in 54s, 55s, and just staying relaxed and staying comfortable. And he really instilled confidence within me. He instilled confidence about that I can make it to the next level, like Marcellus or Kamari or any of the guys that he's coached in the past. And he saw that I had the passion. And that's another big part of it too. Self-confidence and the self-belief that you can make it to that next level. If you tell a 205 runner he's going to go 148, there's a long way to go. Obviously, it's not going to work. But if you tell a 205 runner, go 203, go 202. He's splitting two flats, 159s, right? And then confidence starts to come. I was like, all right, I can do these things. You got to set attainable goals and achievable goals in the near future. If you tell yourself you want to jump 17 seconds, it's not going to happen. If you have $500 in the bank account and you want to make $500,000, it's not going to happen in one day. But you can make it happen if you stack good habits on top of each other, and that's what I was doing. I knew that if I did not get a track scholarship in 2021, I would be going to work right away and give up on my track and field dreams and give up on everything that I have in current day. And I'm glad that I didn't, because I was putting in work when nobody was. When COVID hit, a lot of people were better than me. A lot of people were lined up, were in position to beat me that up and coming track season, but they didn't. They folded. The pandemic, all of this nonsense about the COVID stuff and yada, 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 they fell victim to it, right? They took it from a victim approach, but I saw it in a different, I looked at it from a half glass full type of approach. I thought, okay, I don't have school, I have online school, which really didn't even count. I can put as much energy into becoming the best track and field athlete that I can possibly be. And so I did that. I poured my heart and soul into my training. AAU coach, when it came to the 4 mile, 5 mile morning runs, when it was 2 degrees out in Illinois, I would do them. I would go to work. I was working at Walmart at the time, trying to get some money up. And then next thing you know, I'd show up to these track and field meets, and I was ready. I would do workouts in the dark with my buddies. I gathered two of my best friends at the time, Gabe and Brian, they were both younger than me. I would literally set them up in different positions of my workouts. Let's say I had 5 300s, right? I would set Gabe up at the 100 and Brian up at the 200 and be like, all right, you're going to race me here. And then Brian, you race me on the back end so I can keep my form and tell me how I look. And then we do it again and again, whether it was cold, whether it was hot, whether it was snowing, raining. We trained because I knew that I wanted to make it to the next level. We did hill workouts together. We played football together. We did stuff to just stay in shape because they knew I wanted to go D1. They knew I wanted it bad. And honestly, they didn't have quite much else to do. And so now looking back on it, those guys helped me go Division I, too. And so there's so many different sections of my story and how I got to different places. And getting to that 154, right, in Chicago, these meets that I mentioned to you where if I didn't run good, I wasn't going to get a scholarship. I show up in around January, early January, all this training, and I'm thinking, all right, I go out there, I run a sub 155, I got my scholarship. Bam, I go to this meet, get out, nobody's even near me. I think the next time after me was like 4 or 5 seconds after, so I ran 154 low, break my indoor school record in the 800. Next thing you know, nobody's even near me, but no colleges had contacted me for a scholarship at all. No colleges said, oh my gosh, Niko, this 154 you ran indoors, that's awesome. Like, I want to give you a scholarship. Nobody called. I remember at the time a JUCO school or NAIA school ended up contacting me and they're like, listen, man, that 154 is good, but no Division I school is going to offer you at that time. You are not that athlete yet, but I can develop you. Come to my school. Basically saying that I wasn't capable of doing it. And I say this story and it sounds pretty funny because he probably did not mean this at all, but I was very hard-headed at the time. I was making up scenarios in my head, almost like Michael Jordan, on ways to get angry and more reasons to get me motivated to train harder and to obtain that scholarship that, you know, I heard that and took it as, oh, you're not good enough to do it. You're not deserving of that. And I said, absolutely not. So you know what I did after that? After I ran that 156, I trained twice as hard than I trained in the previous months. I'm almost puking in workouts, and I do not puke in workouts, but I'm setting the treadmill to a crazy incline, and I'm running like 2 miles on there as fast as I can, passing out after, heartbeat just killing me. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm going to hills. I'm sprinting as fast as I can. I'm in the weight room doing push-ups, lifting. I'm hungry, right? I never approached anything with more hunger in my entire life. I was ready to die for it almost, right? And so I had another race scheduled coming up for the 600-meter run. And so I had never run a 600 in my entire life, didn't even know what the race was, didn't even know why the race existed. But there's a big backstory coming in about some kid coming from Wisconsin that was supposed to come and beat me, a phenom sophomore, and I just wasn't going to let that slide. And I knew that the state record was 120. I came through 600 in my 154 and 125, so I'm like, all right, just full out sprint this thing, let's go. So I show up to this race, all these headlines are talking, blah, blah, blah. They're like, this state record's about to get broken. I didn't care. I didn't give a damn about the state record, right? All I cared about was trying to get a scholarship. And if breaking that state record was going to give me that scholarship, then let's go. I'll go 110. I didn't care. So I show up to this race. Bam, the sophomore's on the outside of me. And some random kid from, I think, Boston or Manchester is on my inside. And I get out, I pass the sophomore instantly. I'm like, oh yeah, we're killing this dude. Who is this guy? Next thing you know, the dude from Boston flies past me. I'm, what? So he comes through in like 23. I'm like, all right, this is the race that I need. So I'm right behind him in 24. We're going. We come through 400 and like 51 low. Next thing you know, I'm like, dude, I have so much energy right now. Who's this kid think he is? Bye. Pass him on that backstretch. Sprinting down the home straightaway. Families in the crowd going crazy. The announcers glazing. Next thing you know, bam, the whole entire board goes black. Dang, what did he just run? That looked like a fast time. Oh my gosh, 119. And the announcer goes, ladies and gentlemen, you just witnessed the fastest 600-meter time in the entire nation. And oh my gosh, after that, my entire world changed, bro. I got scholarships or texts from coaches that I've never even seen or heard of before somehow within seconds after my race. I pick up my phone, Iowa, Nebraska, Purdue, Penn State, Illinois, freaking, I don't even know who else, but there was more colleges on that list. And I'm like, what do I do? Literally, I spent that entire night answering phone calls and getting on Zoom calls with different people because they were so shocked by that 119 and that state record getting broken. And that's all it took. I thought I was gonna, break the Illinois 800-meter record or the 400-meter record in order to get a scholarship, but that 600 is the only reason why I'm here at the University of Nebraska today, is because of that approach that I had. And fast forward a little bit, I get to the University of Nebraska. I open up my season in December in a 152, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, we're gonna go crazy this season. And then bam, I get hurt, stress fracture in my shin, done for the season. So I train, I'm cross training, I'm getting back to doing pool workouts. I open up my outdoor season unattached after 5 months of injury with the 152 again. So I maxed my indoor PR. Then I train all out that entire summer. hoping to come back and to prove myself that I belong at this university. And me getting here in that 600-meter race that I just mentioned to you guys before wasn't a fluke. And so I come back and I'm training. I open up in December with a 600 118, a smooth little 118. And then I come back in February, actually, in Arkansas. I'm actually going to this meet next week. So in 2023, I went to Arkansas. I'm facing my high school rival. I went to Plainfield South. He went to Plainfield North at the time. And he gets out on me in this race. He passes me coming up upon 600 meters. I pass him again. Bam! 148. And it sounds crazy, and I try to explain this as fast as possible because you guys can't be on YouTube all day watching my story, watching my videos, but it is just crazy because each time I've done that, my body type was different, my habits were different, the way I looked at life was different. I mean, dude, when I'm running 205, I'm 15 years old, 14 years old, and now I'm 21 years old. At the end of this year, I'm going to be 22 years old. I mean, that's 6 years. That's 6 years of training and learning and developing and how to become a better 800-meter runner. And on top of that, dealing with different life things too, dealing with school, trying to work and trying to make money, trying to become financially free and financially stable, on top of communicating with people, on top of trying to keep up with school, keeping up on your diet, making sure your workouts are getting good, not trying to get help, not trying to get injured. And inspired you to become a better athlete, whether you're a girl, guy, 400-meter runner, 100-meter runner, miler, 5K, 10K, really whatever, even a thrower, whatever the case may be for you. That's just my story. That's my story, how I've gotten to this level. And I'm hoping to keep on sharing this so that one day when I make it to the next level and hopefully represent Puerto Rico one day at the Olympics, that we can look back on my college times and be like, all right, this is where he was at. Now this is where he's at. He's at the 142s, you know, how I went from 148 to 142. What does it take? And I remember an 800-meter runner telling me this, that once you go under 150, everything else kind of feels the same. I mean, that 149, 148, 147, it all sort of feels the same. I kind of tend to disagree with that a little bit because there's been some 148s and 149s that hurt a lot worse. It just depends on what type of shape you're in. And we can cover that inside of a totally different other video, but that is my 17-second story and my personal 800-meter journey of going from 205 to 148. And hopefully this season, 147, 146, and 145. And as you can see on that back whiteboard, 144. Thank you guys for watching. You guys are awesome. Niko Schultz out. Peace.
Once upon a time, there was a man. His name was Niko Schultz. He was an 800-meter runner going into his first ever collegiate season. The year is 2023, and he's super excited to run because the season before, he had gotten a stress fracture in his leg and redshirted his entire freshman season. So the stage is set. All the work from the summer has paid off. The grueling hot days running outside, the painful lifting, the deadly circuits that made him want to pass out, all that work was about to be brought to light at his first ever 800-meter run in college. He opens up his season at Texas Tech, where he runs an indoor time of 1:53, and he is super upset with his performance. So he goes home disappointed and trains even harder for the next race. 2 weeks go by and he trains vigorously and he is locked in. And so he goes and opens up in his home track again with a time of 1:50.01 with a second place finish. And he is thrilled with his time, but again, it's still not good enough for him. So he trains even harder for the next meet. He travels down to Arkansas where he competes against some of the nation's best 800-meter runners. And he's locked in, ready to show the world that he is capable of running a sub 150 800-meter time indoors. And he lines up for this race in the furthest outside alley. He's in the fast heat, and then the gun goes off. Bam! He leads the race from start to finish with a blazing time of 148.8 indoors and completely surpasses the goal time of 149. He did it. He accomplished his goal. All that work that he put in has finally paid off. There is nothing in the world that can make him upset in the heart of this moment. He breathes a sigh of relief, and then something unforeseen happens within him. He feels done. He feels that the goal he set out to do has been reached, and that this is where the start of the end begins. They say that there's beauty in the struggle and ugliness in the success, that hard times create strong men, and that easy times create weak men. Niko has lost that fire in him, the fire that made him who he was in that moment. Everything leading up to that race gave Niko a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, a mission to look forward to, an internal fire that couldn't be put out until he simply reached that goal. And anyone or anything in the way of him and his success would simply be destroyed on that track or just cut out of his life because he didn't need it. But after that race, it was all gone. He shows up to the next practice, happy, content, and living in the past. The weeks prior to that race, he had discipline. He was sharp, dedicated, and pushed by the fear of not achieving his goals. But now, he was simply just showing up and wearing his old accomplishments on his sleeve with no future desire and an ego twice the size of the house he was living at. He believed that he was the best and that he was entitled to winning every race from then on out. But man, did he learn fast that was the furthest from the truth. Once you become successful in college track, you face a new challenge. It's the challenge called consistency. Yes, you ran fast, but now you have a target on your head from all the other athletes in your event group. They want what you have, and you have to defend that reputation of yours like your life depends on it, or else you're gonna fall right back to the bottom of the food chain. And unfortunately for Niko, that is exactly what happened to him. He showed up to his next meet at the conference championship cocky, overconfident, and ultimately got owned in the finals of the 800. And he didn't care. He then went on to his outdoor season. After a long spring break of simply not sleeping good, eating healthy, setting his goals, or even caring about his future success on that track, he was too busy enjoying his old accomplishments. And once that outdoor season hit, reality hit even harder. He opened up his outdoor season with an underachieving time of 1:53 and the last place finish at Texas. He then realized that he has to start taking his training serious, but by then the damage was already done and it was too late for him to get back to what he already had. He adopted bad habits as he simply just ate away his fitness that he worked so hard to maintain during his fall training. His body was fatigued because he simply did not recover properly. And although in his mind he thought he was doing enough, he knew deep down in his soul and his heart that he had given up on the true dream of becoming an elite athlete across the entire NCAA. As more meets approached, he began to doubt his ability. He even began not wanting to go or even compete. He'd show up to these competitions and simply just want to go back home in his room, doing whatever he was doing, not competing on that track because he was fearing what was to come next. And he had a right to. After every race, he was on the ground in grueling pain because his fitness was not up to par, his mental was weak, and the worst of all, his spirit was broken. Once he finished up his last race of the year, running an exact time of 1:50.00 outdoors, he couldn't wait to be done. Internally, he said to himself, or thought to himself, that was his last track race he'd ever run because he simply wanted to quit that bad. And for a sport that he used to love so much, he was hurt and, quite simply put, down bad and wanted nothing to do with it. But he knew he was destined for greatness. Deep down in his soul, no matter how far gone he may have been on the outside, there was something internally reminding him of the man/athlete he had to become. There was something bigger than himself, bigger than he could ever dream of or imagine becoming. And once he took a well-needed 2-week break and a long time of reflection, he looked himself in the mirror and said, "Never again. It's time to get back to work." He then proceeded to script out a list of non-negotiables that he would take place during his next track season and training leading up to the season. He wrote down that he would never eat junk food while competing again, that he wouldn't party, go out, or do anything that would negatively affect his energy during his competition season. He would never question his coaching and would put his full trust and belief into his training. And finally, he said to himself that he would start taking himself more serious. And by doing that, he would start giving back to his community as he's always dreamed of doing. So he hit record and started his own YouTube channel to inspire other runners to reach their max potential on the track and in life. And with this new mindset that Niko adopted, he quickly elevated and got back to feeling like his old self again. Although this time, stronger, wiser, and most importantly, he was faster. With this new mindset, he started off his season with a bang and ran a personal best time of 1:48.1 in 2024, which put him at the number 2 800-meter all-time time ever ran at Nebraska. And then the next week, he went down to the same track where everything went downhill the year previous, and he went 1:47.7. But the only difference this time around was he was humble, patient, and hungry for more success. Although his conference championship the next week was unsuccessful, he still saw the bigger picture of his outdoor season as he trained harder than he ever did during that spring break, and he went on to open up his outdoor season with a time of 1:47.4, another personal best, and a time that got him under the minimum standard for the Olympic trials. He then went on to Drake Relays, where he had one of his most memorable comebacks of his track career and dove across the finish line for the win with the personal best split time in the SMR 800 of 146.3. But that moment had already happened for Niko. With all the sacrifices he had made with his sleep, diet, dedication to his craft, and self-belief, that moment was created months in advance. All he had to do was go out there, believe in himself, and give it his all. He realized that he couldn't hide from himself or his training, and that what was done behind closed doors will always find a way to shine, both good and bad. Only this time around, he made sure it was not only good, but that it was simply legendary. And as he still is in the heart of the season, he still holds himself to these high standards, as his goals do not care how he feels on a day-to-day basis, but whether or not he still puts in the work every day, and most importantly, that he still believes he is capable of all the things he sets himself out to achieve. What I hope you as a viewer can take away from this video and this story is to understand that no matter how fast or how slow you are, your reality can be whatever it is you want it to be. If you dedicate yourself to being a champion day in, day out, you will arrive at your destination in due time. And the same is with the reverse. If you ignore the little things, become arrogant, act oblivious to your goals, and misalign your actions with the person you plan to become, you will ultimately fail in the long run. I was not always the fastest, but one thing that separated me from my competition, it was my ability to bounce back after devastating moments in my life. So many races that I was meant to win were lost in horrific fashion. So many unfortunate events in my personal life that had me questioning my love for the sport and lacking reasoning to go on. All this to say, nevertheless, all these moments, the good, the bad, and everything else in between, made me who I am today. The runner you see running on your screen, the guy diving across the finish line, the guy still smiling after a loss and a win, and the person who is attempting to make a positive change in his world. He realizes that in order to achieve greatness in his life, you have to be willing to sacrifice fun times. To leave a legacy that is worth remembering, you must understand that delayed gratification will serve your future self better than your present self. And this takes an immense amount of discipline and self-belief beyond imagination. But I was able to achieve this and live it. And I am here to tell you today that you can accomplish this too, in absolutely anything you want to be in this life. So I will end this video with 2 questions. Why not you? And most importantly, why not now?